Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour, brought to you by FantasyGuru.com, part of the Elite Plus Network. On today's show, per as usual, we have the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend behind the curtain, Sean Engel. You can find on X at SeanE247. Remember, that's Sean, S-E-A-N. Nice and simple. And back with us again, we'll keep him around as long as he'll have us, or as long as he'll join us, Mark Hogan. You can find on X at DFS_Marlin. And then I'm here today too, the Res Commissioner. I'm running with it. I don't care. Racing Entertainment Series is what it is. Do not follow me on X. It's not worth it, but I am on there at Fantasy Bosco. Gentlemen, we're this close to getting to the real race season, man. Are you excited or what?
Yeah, every inch, every step closer. We got 2 super speedway races out the door. Are we going to go to a regular track? Oh, no. We're going to a road course this week. We're turning left and right before we just turn only left in a normal oval this year.
And before we get into that, I do want to give a shout out to FantasyGuru.com that allows us to do this podcast. And you can find our content for racing along with everything else that's not football or baseball with our MVP package, which is still discounted. As far as I know, I haven't seen anything saying otherwise. And remember, when you sign up, that gets you 12 months. So full year for $79.99. That means if you want Jorge Puck's hockey stuff, you get it. And it'll carry over into next year. So you can finish out this year and you get to continue on till this point next year. Goes too for Finsty and the NBA package. I believe we got some of the college picks coming out too. I don't know if UFL's a part of it. I should check that out, because I know Tyler and Mark got UFL stuff dropping. So we should probably
I believe it is, because the package covers everything but the football and baseball. And so that means if you get it right now too, you'll be covered for March Madness as well, because that's going to be coming up before we know it. Heck, by the time next week's show hits, we're already going to probably be talking about it.
That's right. And hey, NASCAR this year is doing its own bracket, which we'll talk about later. But I got a question, Sean, because I heard you say we went to 2 super speedway tracks, and I had this discussion with someone else. I struggle to call Atlanta super speedway. The definition I was always told, short tracks are under a mile. Super speedways are over 2 miles. So technically, Indianapolis, Pocono, Daytona, Talladega are all super speedways. Atlanta, being 1.5 miles, was always considered intermediate. Now, I know we do pack racing and drafting or whatever you want to call it, but this is something I'm struggling with because I don't know the proper nomenclature, because I don't think Atlanta qualifies as a super speedway. But I would also say,
I guess you could call it a drafting track. That's really what NASCAR calls it now.
Well, that's what I was going to say. What's the right term? Because I still consider it plate racing. I know we don't use plates anymore. And I know NASCAR got mad when we went to the tapered spacer, which was, hint, it was still a plate. It was just thicker. But I don't know that. I'm trying to find a term that works, Sean, and I'm not comfortable with one. We draft everywhere. So I agree with you. It's a drafting track, but I struggle with that term because we do draft everywhere. Not to this degree. This is a whole nother animal. I used pack racing, but I would argue we didn't really get a lot of pack racing at Atlanta. Not like Daytona and Talladega. You know, we had some single file stuff and things like that. So I don't know that pack racing really works. I don't know. I'm spitballing terms. I'm open to all ears because I've heard so many people use different terms. And I'm like, at this point, we are going to get the masses so confused.
The masses are already confused. What are you talking about?
This is true. I mean, we don't know when a yellow flag is going to drop. So, I mean, or what constitutes a flag dropping, right? I guess. So we'll run with drafting, whatever. I wasn't trying to nitpick with you, Sean. It was just, I literally had this conversation with somebody else this week. And I'm like, I don't know the proper terms. Because to me, it's still plate racing. I don't know another way to describe it. We use EFI now, but we do the same things.
Look,
even though
you know what it is? I think we all know what we're talking about with as far as the type of racing we're seeing, and as far as the type of tracks that we expect to have them, but we can never agree on a name, but we know what it is.
Garbage racing. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that out loud, but I digress.
Some drivers would agree with that.
But to your point, this is the 3rd race of the season, and we're going to a 3rd track where we only do a handful of races this way, right? Like, Mark, you said your first experience was Daytona, right? It was cool. Oh, yeah. It was unique. We go to Daytona twice. We go to Dega twice. We go to Atlanta twice. So don't get me wrong. That's 6 races this way, but we have a 36 race schedule, and they're the only races on those types of tracks, right? So now we've already got 2 of the 6 out of the way. Sean, correct me how many road courses we hit in this year. Is it 3 or 4? Or is it 5?
I want to say that I think it's at least 5 or 6 if you even want to count Chicago.
I forget about Chicago. So we'll have Sonoma, we'll have Watkins Glen, we'll have COTA, we'll have the Roval, right? And
Chicago. And then new this year, they're adding Mexico City, which
that's right.
One.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't count that. They can count it as a points race. In my mind, it's a faux race, so I don't count it. NASCAR can get mad at me, and that's fine, and people can tune in, but it's a faux race. So I guess we'll go to 6 then. So 12, 1/3 of all the races we do are basically 2 styles of racing, right? And then the rest is all the other, which don't get me wrong, cookie cutters are kind of similar and all that, but you get where I'm going here. 3 of the races to start the year are only 1/3 of the tracks, and we barely see them the rest of the year. I don't know. I go back to my statement before the show. I'm pretty sure NASCAR management is just coked up rich boys. I don't know another way to put it. I think they're off their rocker, but I digress. So what are your guys' thoughts on Atlanta? Do you guys have any thoughts on the cautions by chance?
It's confusing. And I am the masses, right?
Okay. Yeah. You know what, Mark? No, I want to hear from you, Mark. Seriously, break it down. We talked last week. You're kind of in the casual fan aspect. You are not a casual bettor or fantasy player. Let's get that out of the way. But from a fan of NASCAR, that is more of a casual thing for you. You're neck deep in some of the other sports and have been for years. This is relatively new. So you tell me, between what you saw at Daytona in this race, Mark, what are your thoughts with the cautions dropping? You said it's confusing. Lay it on us.
I think you want to see them finish at the end of the day. From my perspective, I would like to see each and every race finish when it gets to that point. I mean, look, I guess it's tough, debris on the track, whatever it might be, whatever the reason is for throwing it, you'd hope that obviously safety is the first concern, but I don't know, from a fan's perspective, when it's at that end of the race, you just invested like 3 hours of your time. It's like, wait, what? He won when the light went off, and now we have to go back and no one's sure. And it feels like, maybe the other guy won because the other guy finished earlier, so it just adds to the anticlimactic finish, I feel like, in my opinion.
Sean, hit me with you, because you've been watching a long time. You and I go back to when we raced back to the yellow flag. So lay it on me.
Me personally, I do think the caution at the end was the right call for safety reasons, but I think really it's just the fact that NASCAR's been so inconsistent with the timing of the cautions and everything that really just makes it a little bit frustrating to see, because on one moment you have a race where they're going to just let them race back to the line, and then on another moment they're just going to freeze it before they get back to the line at the time of caution there to determine everything that happens. It's just inconsistent, and then when that happens it gets confusing, and then really the fans get cheated out of that.
And I do feel bad for NASCAR management in this particular example, right? Because I totally appreciate where Mark's coming from. I totally appreciate where a driver and safety concern comes from. And I appreciate from NASCAR trying to deliver to all parties. Okay. My concern is, if we're not going to be consistent on the flags, NASCAR already has a bad problem as far as conspiracy, black helicopter thinking, right? It's rigged. I mean, we hear this more with the NFL, but this is relatively new for the NFL. For NASCAR, this has been around forever. They've been accused of letting some people cheat and not cheat, and dictating outcomes and all that. So to me, now we're starting to bring into question integrity, I guess, in some aspect, because at what point do you do it, not do it? I get where Mark is at, and I wish Mark watched when we still race back to the yellow. That was fun. I'm not going to lie. At the same time, I'm not going to be ignorant and sit here and say it wasn't dangerous. I still have in my head Dale Jarrett sideways, I think it was Martinsville, sideways on the front stretch as the leaders were coming right at him, racing to the finish. And those guys are in it. They've got one thing on their mind. So, yeah, they're going to avoid the car that's sideways. But here's Dale Jarrett stuck in his car, traffic coming at his door, full speed ahead. We almost had a complete disaster.
Yeah.
And Denny Hamlin's point is, safety equipment can't get on the track until the yellow flies. So your example of Daytona, where we let them race for a while, what if one of those cars were upside down? What if one of those hits was as dramatic and severe that we've seen Kyle Busch break his legs, or unfortunately what happened to Dale Sr., that sort of thing, and we're delaying safety people to get out there? That's a concern for me. I think, to Mark's point, though, we have spoiled fans into conditioning them and thinking that they should see a finish like that across the line at every race. Coming from a generation, right? Coming from a generation where we had races finished under yellow, Dale Sr.'s 500 win, I like to remind people. I don't think, me personally, I'm not as hung up on that. I get it, but I've seen so many lackluster finishes under the caution over the years. Like, it just doesn't really ring a bell. I do agree, though, it makes it confusing because which camera angle are we looking at? They did a great job this week of showing the actual camera light right when the light changed, right? But I maintained that call last year where I said they didn't show us the right call, that they weren't across the line, all that. I still don't. They did a better job this time. I'll applaud them for that.
Yeah, that was a reaction that Fox on NASCAR did now they're including that shot of the caution light as it goes on now.
That
at the very least, they listened to that.
That was brilliant. Well, leave it. The TV companies listen, not NASCAR, right? Yeah. I don't know the answer, gentlemen. The old fart me says real simply, I'd rather end under caution.
Like you said, obviously safety is the most important thing. So the next best thing, in my opinion, is at least having an expectation of what could happen. Like you said, consistency. Just if this happens, then this should be the results, and this is how they're going to measure who won. Like, I want to be able to, as a fan, say, oh, they threw it. Okay, I know exactly how this is going to work. This guy won, and I can figure that out within 5 to 10 seconds. So to sit there and not know for a minute, 2 minutes, however long it takes, and then you're not sure how they're measuring it, and maybe it's this way this 1 week, but then they do it a little bit differently the other week, it just makes it hard for someone like myself to just be able, it ruins the climax of the event. It ruins the 3 hours that you invested to watch the race.
Right. So let me ask you this, Sean. Would you be comfortable, because again, we've seen so many rules change. Would you be comfortable if the moment they decide, like whether that moment is debris on the track when a car hits the wall, because we've seen them brush against the wall, keep going. We've seen them spin, keep the tires on, keep going. We've seen drivers who stall it out and they claim, well, I couldn't get it started. And NASCAR's to throw the caution, and they call them to the hauler, be like, are you sure you couldn't get it started? Like, we've got telemetry. So, be honest with us. I'm with Mark. I just want the consistency. I have no problem if we're going to go to, if it's on the white flag, we throw the caution wherever the cars are on the track at that moment. Yes, it's going to take us time as NASCAR to nail it all. But honestly, someone like Fox showing that screen with the caution and where the cars are at, to Mark's point, we just need the TV companies to show us a couple of replays, and we have a pretty good idea. And at least we know, shoot, they wrecked back there. We're watching. We're watching the front to see when that caution comes out, right? Is that fair? Is that reasonable in your opinion, Sean?
Really, I think that it overall, what I'd like for them to do is just to make them go towards the distance and have it just be at that. Or just overall, if we're going to have overtime, we keep them maybe just one overtime per se to give it one shot to end under green properly. That's what I'd like to say.
But I'm saying white flag comes out, they throw the caution. You go to they throw the caution consistently, like Mark says, and we go back to TV. Because remember, they used to do the scoring line garbage. Well, the previous scoring line, Bell was technically ahead, and they didn't get to the next scoring line. So Bell is actually the winner. That we've played that game too. I think that it's just like the NFL adding the whole bird's eye thing now, right, to the first down. Why can't we just take a snapshot? Yellow comes out, snapshot the field. That's where they finish.
We have the technology to do it now. I think that is exactly what we should do.
And maybe if they're making an effort to provide full transparency, do something like what the UFL does. Like, take a Dean Blandino type, where NASCAR officiating is on the effing broadcast itself, making that decision. The volume is on, the audio is there, and you get to listen to them say, okay, this guy crossed. We're looking at this image. Great. This is the winner. I want to hear it from the officiating themselves. That would make it a lot more interesting. That would make it a lot more intense. And it also would allow someone like me to know exactly what's going on every second of the way.
Like what they're saying in the booth. This is what typically happens. Say someone saw this, they're radioing to the director, the director's deciding to throw the caution or not, etc. Mark, I love that idea. I hate to break it to you, though. NASCAR does not like to be transparent.
Yeah. Well, times change.
Well, not
man.
on that level, at least. Not on that same level.
True. But as a general rule, they have always, like I said, I can't even get a copy of the rule book. We have a show that we do largely about it, and we can't get a copy of the rule. We can get credentials, but we can't get a copy of the rule book, right? Weird stuff like that. And to your point, Sean, and I'll cap it with this, and you guys can take over. I would love if we went back to one green-white checker shot, just one. Because what's going to happen, mark my words, this weekend, like we saw a couple years ago, we're going to get wadded up with 5 laps to go. It's going to be a 50-50 shot. The green-white checker goes green. It probably doesn't. And now all of a sudden we do three attempts, and all of a sudden fuel mileage is now the story, and a whole bunch of good cars are pitting and are no longer in the race because we've extended the distance so many times. So, Sean, what you guys are asking for, and look, we're just schmucks, right? What you guys are asking for, in my opinion, is exactly what we should be doing if I was NASCAR, but we're the racing entertainment series, so
yeah, and then what's going to keep happening is because everybody wants to go for the win, and if you're a full-time driver, you want to have that assurance that you're in the playoffs. People are just going to keep dive bombing onto turn 1, and that's going to keep causing cautions to happen because people will either get damaged or their cars are just going to stall out.
And we're going to spin out and have them all wadded up like they do at turn 1.
Yep.
Well, it's a shame.
PTSD from losing fuel.
It's going to be Nashville
DFS
last year all over again.
I told you, Mark, it's why I can't watch my lineups live, bro. I can't do it. They do. I get so angry. So now I don't even go look at my lineups once I set them until about 10 minutes after the checkered flag. Why? Because as we saw this week and last week, scoring isn't very official, even when the race is officially over. I went back and looked, and I moved up this week. Last week, I went back and looked, and I lost. One of the lineups went from cashing to not cashing. So,
that's rough.
Mark, I've been playing with low dollars right now because I'm still trying to find my groove. It's more of where am I placing is more my goal. But it was funny because I did check 10 minutes after, saw that I won about 3/5 of my money back. Checked it out about, I don't know, half hour later. Turns out I won 4/5 of my money back.
There you go.
Which when you have a wreck at the end, it takes a while to get it figured out. But watching is such a dangerous game, guys.
The only thing I will say about watching, and the reason why I do it, I try not to watch every second of the way because otherwise all of a sudden you're not watching the race itself. But I think it's important to check in on it after big moments for learning purposes, understanding, okay, hey, what happens when a high ownership guy wrecks out? What happens when a low ownership guy wrecks out? What happens when 3 guys you don't have in your lineup that are all contrarian plays, all place in the top 5, right? I mean, I think there's a few different reasons and things that you can learn from following it live so that you can think about those types of scenarios when building future lineups.
Which part of the reason I like some chalky plays, Mark, I have learned if you have a chalky guy and he wrecks, you still have a fair shot.
Oh, you're fine.
There have been so many times I'm like, well, my main guy's out, only to find out he was 60% owned. So it didn't matter. Yeah. Right. I mean, it has thoroughly shocked me how, in my opinion, and I love your approach, Mark, because it's giving me a different outlook. It's more about bidding against ownership in dollars. Does that make sense? Like there's so much luck involved at times. There was a handful of drivers we all liked that were up front most of the race and crashed out. We had guys that we liked that kind of weren't factors all race, and at the end they were. So, I mean, we weren't wrong, right? But building the lineups, I feel like it really is more dependent on ownership and how to attack it, right? Like Mark has pointed out numerous times, we're not going to win it all if we're super chalky. You may cash frequently, but you're not going to win significant enough money to offset because the low cashing doesn't even get you to break even, right? So you've got to have some big swings. But if you have some big swings, you've got to have low ownership. Carson Hocevar, Mark pointed out this week, was a great example. Only 4%. We all said his line was way off. That's a great example too. I don't know if Mark looked at the pricing and the odds, but both were so off. Well, the money wasn't nearly as off as the odds were, right? So in Mark's logic, at least what he shared with us, right, that tells us it's probably a decent DFS play, right? Well, I guess am I looking at it backwards? No, that would be right.
No, absolutely. It was the odds were, a great payout, right? More than, what we expected based off of the data that we had and what we had talked about last week. So naturally, and that's how I did my ownership projections for Xfinity last week, and it was pretty darn close again. Naturally, the better odds a guy has, the higher ownership they're probably going to have as well. So Hocevar was lower than what we expected at the price point, and so he gave us a golden ownership opportunity of single digits, less than 5%, and someone who could provide us massive upside, and he came through.
That's big.
Mm-hmm.
The odds and placing, especially on a super speedway, have obviously huge influence on ownership. And like we were talking about last week, I'm becoming more and more confident in this process. You just have to change the different variables that you're taking into account when you're projecting ownership for a slate. So this will be a little bit different this week, and I'm sure we'll get into it here in a moment.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Also, I do want to to transition us here because we talked about Carson Hocevar. I'd have to imagine if you were the 96% of DFS players that didn't use him, you hated him about as much as all the drivers did on track. So let's talk about it. All the drivers hated racing against Carson Hocevar on the track this weekend. We saw many drivers go up and have conversations with him after the race, guys. How about that?
I saw the best comic today, right? Have you guys, it's used over and over. It's a meme that goes around, but it's like two pay windows, right? And there's a huge long line on the one window and no line on the other window. There's usually some play on that, right? So the one I saw had the long line above it was drivers upset with Carson Hocevar, right? And then the one with just one person in it was drivers congratulating Chris Bell on his win. And I just thought it was so spot on, right? Because there's been very little talk of Christopher Bell pulling off this win, right? Starting in the back, had a great run, stayed clean. Really, I think we've done a disservice to the hat tip on Christopher Bell winning this race, right? Because of all the Hocevar talk. But my Lord, man, on door bumper clear, Tommy Baldwin went after him. He's been in the league a year. Got to start to learn somehow. And I'm sitting here and I'm laughing because I'm not as mad at Hocevar, okay? Do I think he was over aggressive? Yes, especially that bump where he hit the dude's left rear. That's a big no-no. Like, everybody knows not to do that. But honestly, I didn't see him driving any dumber than Joey Logano, than Ricky Stenhouse, than Brad Keselowski at times, than Kyle Larson did, who actually won a stage and finished a drafting plate-style racing track, which I think everybody was floored about. Talk about a solid contrarian play to use. Nobody used him, and he was near the front. But I just find it funny in that all you guys did the same crap at one point, man. I go back to don't hate the player, hate the game. You've heard me talking about Joey Block. I dog on him, but you haven't heard me speak out or freak out in the middle of the race about him doing a dumb block or any of that. They all do it. This is what the racing has produced, man. What do you want him to do? Like, it's like hunting a deer. Oh, you're mad I used a rifle. Do you want me to use a knife? Would it make you feel better if I somehow camouflaged my stuff and laid it in the ground and jumped up with the knife? Like, is it really change anything? It just makes you feel better or what? Like, I don't know. The outcome, Hocevar did what he was supposed to do. If I'm his sponsor, his team owner, am I mad at him?
Nope. Because guess what? It means that the sponsor themselves are going to get more exposure towards themselves on TV, which, hey, they like that at all. But, something I did want to bring up was you guys saw what Carson himself said in regards to all the people talking about him, too. Did you also see that, Mark?
No, I missed it.
Well, then I'll throw it up on screen for you. Check it out. He said it himself. We're here to win races, not be a boy band and love each other and play on the playground together.
I love that.
Do you know what's funny? That is not that far off a Joey Logano quote a couple of years ago, Sean.
Yeah, exactly.
From my perspective too, I literally thought of Joey Logano when everyone was getting upset afterwards, just because he was obviously one of the individuals a little bit more vocal about it. And I don't know, man. It's just, it seemed almost ironic. Look, that's like him just saying, "Come meet me in the infield, man, if you really have a problem, and we'll settle this." But who is that talking to him? That's a little pissed off right there. He
no,
looks
that's
a
Ross
little
Chastain.
So Ross is a little bit smaller than Carson Hocevar, and maybe that gives him a little bit of extra confidence here as well.
Freddie Kraft, who was Bubba Wallace, I don't know if he still is, but he was Bubba Wallace's spotter, said it's at the point someone needs to jump up on a stool and punch him in the nose. The one guy podcast goes jump up on a stool, and I'm like, well, he is a tall guy. Like most of the drivers in the garage aren't going to be able to go toe to toe with them and have any sort of reach. Michael Waltrip could have, but most of the drivers today, I don't know if you've seen them, Mark, but what did we figure up, Sean? The average height was like 5'6"?
Something like that.
And how tall is he? He's like 6'3"?
I think he's 6'3" or 6'4". I'll look it up.
He's got the reach, man. So you could just tell by looking at him. He's got an advantage over probably a lot of these guys.
Yeah, but the whole thing with
6'4".
Ross, 6'4". There you go. With Ross talking to him though, is that Carson sees Ross as a bit of a mentor figure here when he was rising up through the ranks, and those two do have a relationship that goes far back towards when they used to been driving for similar teams together, or whenever Ross would race for Nice Motorsports back in the truck series as well too. So really, Ross and Carson, they have the sort of relationship where they do kind of talk to each other with at least a modicum of respect, because they've had a connection. But I wish it was also like showing the photo where Blaney was going after Carson, because Blaney looked hella pissed out there.
Blaney was ready to fight. And it's ironic in that Ross has had his own reputation of bumping people around, Sean. You know what I mean? Like it was just 2 years ago. Chase Elliott wanted to fight him. Denny Hamlin wanted to fight him. Everybody in the garage wanted to fight Ross Chastain. So if anyone can talk Hocevar through it and say, hey, this is a ways to improve. And Carson did say, look, there's some things I would do differently. Sure. But the goal was to get to the front, and he's learning. And I'm sorry, Tommy Baldwin, we don't have a lot of tracks like this. And as much as I respect Tommy Baldwin and how they used to race, unfortunately, this new group doesn't race that way, Tommy. And so that respect isn't in the garage anymore. And you can hear Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin talk about that.
Yeah, it's true. 100%. But, out of all this, we also forget that Carson ended up getting his best career cup finish out of this whole deal.
And hey, hat tip to RCR in the Xfinity race. Austin Hill was so good. That was never in question. If you didn't have Austin Hill in your lineup, you were missing out, because you missed out on a whole lot of laps led, like all of them.
Oh yeah, he just 10. Dominated that one.
Dominated. So hat tip to RCR and Austin Hill, because he was the class of the field at Daytona before he wrecked, and then Jesse Love took over. Jesse Love couldn't get out of his own. Both. What's interesting to me? Joey Logano had the fastest car in the Cup race, and he was a non-factor all day in Atlanta. Jesse Love had, if not the fastest car at Daytona, definitely top 2 or 3. He was a non-factor at Atlanta. So just something to kind of note, and for the next time we come here. But
Austin Cindric wasn't at both. Austin Cindric looked like he had probably the best car at both.
For both races, right?
Yeah.
And I tell you what, man, I kept coming to his name. I thought he had done better on the road courses. And maybe I have misremembered from the other series, but I keep wanting to come back to Austin Cindric, and I couldn't find any numbers that had me going, let me go with Austin Cindric. But I got this stinking suspicion, man, that dude, it took him 3 years in the other series to kind of turn the page. And I think we're at that point with him, because this is kind of a shit or get off the pot moment for Austin Cindric. I mean, his dad probably had some help getting him to this level, but at this point, if he's not going to produce, I don't think he's going to be at Penske long. But I tell you what, through 2 races, if he shows out again this week, I don't care where the finish is. If he shows speed again this week, we better take note of Cindric for the rest of the year.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
scrappy.
Mhm.
Price down normally.
He's intelligent too. He's not a dumb one. He's not going to put the car in stupid places. He is not, tell you what, he is not going to pull a Hocevar. Hocevar is a little more kamikaze, and I expect him to be a factor sooner than later. He did a great job for Jimmy Johnson's soccer club team in the limited spot he had. Cindric is more like a Daniel Hemrick or even Greg Biffle at first, where it was almost like they needed to kind of learn the roots, get their sea legs, and then look out. Game on.
So overall, really to just put a bow on the whole thing there, Xfinity race was pretty interesting, even if it was an Austin Hill dominance fest. The Cup race had its moments too. I mean, still, we didn't even talk about the whole Kyle Larson, Austin Cindric incident that much too, because that kind of got overshadowed by Carson as well. But yeah, that was another big factor into the race as well. You want to talk about Christopher Bell's win being overshadowed? That incident was also overshadowed as well too.
True story. And if people don't know, basically Larson was told he wasn't clear, and Larson said, "F it, I'm clear," and forced his way up the track. So,
Classic
he
Larson.
finished. Hey, he finished, man. I mean, he never does. So, props on that side of it. The truck race was decent. It was kind of
Sawalich. Sawalich, man, he killed me.
It was tough, Mark, because whether it was Carson Guapo, whether it was Lane Riggs, whether it was Sawalich, there was a lot of cars that showed good speed, got near the front, and somehow ended up getting involved in a wreck or got just kind of cycled out. The trucks has a lot more inexperience, so you're going to see that at times. Corey Haim's on his way, though, Sean. In fact, I checked odds. He's only plus 250 to win the truck championship. I would not bet that. As much as I like Haim and think he should win it, I can't recommend a future bet.
It's too low. Too low.
At 2.5 to 1.
Hasn't hit the Maletto level yet.
Dude,
you need him in
go
order
look at the
to
futures.
lose at a couple races and then see if that line gets deeper.
Yeah.
If you go look at any of the futures, they are all awfully aggressive. I mean, Lane Riggs plus 750 for a championship. Like, yeah, it's plausible, but we don't even know who the final four are going to be yet. And so, you're giving us odds to win Daytona at plus 1,000, but then you're only giving us plus 300 to win the championship. Like, I get it's a more wide open slate to win that race, but okay. Did you have Ben Rhodes anywhere near winning the truck championship last year?
Nope.
Not even. I mean, we talked about it the last race.
Majeski won last year. I think you mean 2 years ago, right?
Oh, was it Majeski that pulled it out last year?
Yeah, Majeski won the truck title last year.
I thought Ben Rhodes did. My bad. No, but I tell you what, we didn't have Majeski. Majeski, we used him at like a handful of tracks, and that was it.
He was basically like the number 3 driver behind Eckes and Haim last year.
Yeah.
Really, who were the class of the truck field. But Majeski was like the next guy down.
But what do you think about this Ruggiero guy? I mean, now we have 2 races, right?
Dude.
I mean, he's impressive.
Yeah,
so,
Gio.
Here's the thing. What impresses me, he caught my eye simply because of the equipment he's in. The fact that he has a full-time ride taking over for Taylor Gray in that Tricon truck, that tells me I need to either go back and find some history on him. They are not putting – look, they brought Tori and they've got her in a full-time ride, but if you remember last year it was part-time. Hit and miss here and there. They're doing part-time with William Sawalich, which that's a little different because he's already getting some Xfinity experience. But they aren't typically bringing these young ones in and giving them full rides. They did with Gio. He was really impressive at Daytona. The next 2 races, Mark, are going to give us a much better taste of what we can expect from him. But to answer your question, he is absolutely front and center on my radar.
Totally.
I don't think DFS players are ignoring him either. He was 35% in the main tournament.
Well, because he ran so well the previous week, recency bias. Now, he didn't do that great this week. I need to go find out his road racing history, unless you know it off the top of your head, Sean, because I don't.
Are you talking as if there's a truck race this week? Because there is
that's
none.
right. There's not. Dude, I get so confused with Xfinity and trucks at times, man. My God.
He
Trucks
was
aren't
pretty
back
good,
until March.
and he did pretty good. I mean, he started 22nd, he finished 11th.
So still moved up 10 spots.
He got you 44 points at $7,800.
That's a good
And that's the thing. He was priced up immediately on DraftKings and still got 35% ownership. So there's definitely other.
At least they're getting smarter with that, because for the last few years, they were like a month behind. Like Lane Riggs last year was underpriced. Roger Caruth the year before was underpriced for 3 months. So at least they're starting to take, and they've gotten a little jealous or excessive, in my opinion, because for the Xfinity race, they have is Salwich in the Xfinity race this, or no? It's
Yeah,
Connor.
Sawallich is in the Xfinity series.
Okay.
He's in that full-time Gibbs ride.
They have him as the third favorite for that race. That seems aggressive to me. I know his background's on road. I get it, but this isn't SVG with 30 years of experience on it. You know what I mean? Sawallich is what, 19, I think.
And Stuart Friesen and Tyler Ankrum, both single-digit ownership. $7,000 for Friesen, and Ankrum was $8,300.
And the sad thing is both of them were. I know Ankrum was a decent one for. He's had such great history at Daytona. He had the engine problems, and so I wonder if that scared people off, because I had both of them. Friesen I thought was a free square the week before. At the drafting tracks, Friesen is a great bet. Some of the short tracks too. They've been better in that truck. Last year was definitely a down year for them. So I'll be curious to see if they found a little bit more speed, because 2 years ago, Mark, Friesen would have been a top 10 guy in most DFS boards each week. So, but enough of Atlanta. We're going road racing. Like I said, I'm kind of shocked at some of the odds. We'll talk about the odds a little bit later. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. Couple of quick notes on COTA, and Sean, why don't you take us through this? Track configuration. They redid the track for us.
Yes. Sort of. So new to this year, they're changing the layout of Circuit of the Americas. So they are cutting out a bunch of the corners here. I bought an image that NASCAR themselves have provided here, so you could see the clear difference outlined there.
Oh, wow.
Taking a mile off of there. It's still the same amount of turns, but basically that really, really large straightaway that we've seen in years past is no more. And instead, we just got ourselves some turns there, but otherwise the track is relatively the same. So I know I've seen Ross Chastain. He talked about trying this new layout of the track on iRacing, and he said it's actually very interesting that the corners there have completely changed. So the racing is different there in that particular change zone, but otherwise it's the same. So yeah,
I'm dumb. How do we have the same amount of turns? Because I see they added 2 turns, right? But we got rid of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turns.
So basically, they made it so I think actually it is 1 less turn overall compared to before, but it's very close. It's very close.
Well, they've said 20 turns, and it was 20 turns last year, and they keep saying, I mean, you weren't the only one to say that, Sean. They have said that. I'm looking at this photo here, and I'm going, I guess they didn't call certain, like the elbow there, I guess wasn't a turn, and maybe the chicane wasn't a turn, maybe, I guess.
Or maybe they called it 1 collective term or something like that.
Maybe.
I forget the exact terminology.
NASCAR and lingo and definitions, man, my Lord, they make it tough on fans. I feel bad for people that haven't watched since the beginning of Dirt. Like, it's not fair. But anyway, so I'm curious, Sean. I thought the track was too long. I also like that they don't have that. I'm going to call it a hairpin. It's not a hairpin. You know, I feel like that created some other challenges. What do you guys think? Do you think we're going to see much of a different race? I saw the same things you did, Sean, with Ross and a couple of the other guys doing it in the sim. You know, I don't know. Go ahead.
I mean, I was just going to say, I don't think it changes anything from a strategy perspective. This is still a road course, so, you know, the overall approach will be the same, but I don't know. It almost feels like they cut out a little too much. Like, I get the whole straightaway, but maybe they could have gone a little bit further and just kept one of those extra turns on the toward, you know, in that S before you go upwards towards the straightaway. I don't know.
So for context, NASCAR decided to make these changes just because A, they wanted to have the cars come around more often because the track length is shorter. So that ups the lap count by about 30 laps. So what's different is compared to years past where we really didn't focus much on dominators too much at this track, now we're going to have to focus on them just a little bit more than previous years. It's still more in line with like regular road courses, I'd say, but
Yeah.
yeah, they did that in order to just make it so the cars pass around more often and to also shorten the amount of time of cautions instead of having the cars ride around the whole track.
I
It's
like
now
that.
shorter.
I like it for cautions, but like from a strategic perspective, still like what we're talking, because you said it was 65 laps previously. Now it's going to be 95.
Yep, that is correct.
So for me, that doesn't really do much when it comes to considering dominators more, just because it's still so few total laps.
Yeah, it's just a slight bump up, you'd say.
Yeah.
Say you led all 30 of those laps at 7.5 points.
Which, I mean, yeah, 7.5 points, but I don't know. Like we're going up against other races that have 300 or, a lot more laps, 260 type of thing. So 7.5 points, not a huge discrepancy, in my opinion.
I'd still say the overall strategy is still very similar to years past. It's just that now there's that room. There's a slight bit more room for, like, say, for example, it comes down between two top price guys that have dominated the race, but they both led a different amount of laps. Just the amount of laps that drivers are able to lead is just a slight bit more. So that could be the difference between placing like first and fifth or so.
I just think you have to try and set a lineup where you're getting everyone in the top 10. Maybe a cheapo that makes the top 15, but like you really gotta get guys that finish at the top if you want to win.
If we're gonna have any big place differential movers, it's gonna be based on strategy, right? And what I hate is with the planned cautions, it limits some of that strategy. You would see drivers come in literally one or two laps after the green flag drop because they had spaced out where they're going to do their pit stops and for how long. So they don't have to be as long on pit road because they're topping off with fuel. That doesn't take much time. They're getting the 4 tires. They're out the door. Now they've got a set of scuffs if they need at the end of they only have a lap or two that they can use. So it's almost like a free set of tires. We've taken all that away with the planned cautions, unfortunately. But to your point, the sad thing is the winning lineup is going to have the 1 or 2 place differentials in the lineup that they hit, but we're going to be throwing paint at a wall in some degree because none of us can tell you what the pit strategy is. Hell, these crew chiefs don't know until they get to practice and qualifying and they go, okay, we're way off the pace. So here's what we're going to do to combat that to get us track position, right? We aren't privy to those conversations. So unfortunately, we may have a rough idea who to target back there, but to Mark's point, we're going to have some cojones and take some swings if we're really chasing that top lineup. We're going to have to, because it's going to take 1 or 2 low ownership guys that either place in the top 5 or 10 that we don't expect, or you're going to have the 1 or 2 guys that start 25th and somehow make it into the top 10.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fluke and luck. It's going to be a pile up at a late race restart, a crash with 5 laps to go. It's going to be all these things that are unforeseen, out of our control. I'm not going to lie, this is going to be tough.
And there's one other thing to mention that didn't mention within that, and that's track limits are going to be a factor into this.
Oh, Jesus, I forgot about track
course.
limits. That's right. We got the F1 rules in the house. And that one, you want to talk about gray area, Mark, right? We talked about this last year. Was homeboy really was Chase Elliott really outside the limits? Was he not? Like, these are judgment calls.
And didn't
all about that.
Didn't you say with the change in track, we're looking at maybe less opportunities to pass now?
Correct.
Yeah, it is overall less opportunities.
For a perfect example, that straightaway was a good passing zone. If
Yeah.
you got the good runoff and had the good horsepower, you could at least set it up and make it difficult for the next turn. You don't have that anymore. You've got 2 tighter corners now. It's going to be tough. They can be braking zones, but we're probably going to see more beating and banging than we actually see passing there. This is going to be tough.
I think here is what I'm thinking. We could see a top price driver that starts towards the back that all of a sudden becomes this chalk because DFS players from the previous, contests saw what happened with some of those guys like Denny Hamlin, and those guys put up massive points. This might be the week to, if there's a top price driver in the back, maybe this is the week where you don't, place differential is great, but maybe we don't chase place differential. Maybe we try to see if we can find an edge on different, teams that are going to be on the same strategies and stacking drivers that we think are going to take the same approach. Not necessarily know what approach they're going to take, but just who's going to pair off with who and sticking with that. Maybe it's got same manufacturers. I don't know, but if you can find an edge on that front, I think that's probably the better way to approach this.
I tell you what, there's about 2 or 3 crew chiefs that I know will play games like this. Denny Hamlin has one.
Had one.
Well, you're right. I just realized he had one. He's not there anymore. He's now, to be fair though, he's ahead of all the Toyota or all the Gibbs Toyotas. He's competition director, I believe now.
Yep.
So to your point, Mark, we could see, let's say 2 of the Gibbs cars are in the back, 2 are up front. We could see those 2 Gibbs cars on a very similar strategy. To your point, I could see it was Chris Gale, wasn't it? Chris Gale. Wasn't it Chris Gale?
Chris Gale was Ty Gibbs' crew chief last year, but is now Hamlin's crew chief this year.
Now Hamlin's crew chief, right? So I can see Chris Gale making that move. Chad Knaus is never a big fan of not taking 4 tires, but he would do stuff like that. And of course, he's overseeing all the Hendrick guys, right? I could definitely see the soccer club taking that kind of approach.
Just anybody that you would think would have a race script in mind where they have this race circled as one of their big chances to win. And for that, there's a couple of drivers that I could see that being the case. Like we mentioned it there with the soccer club as well. This is one of the few tracks where they could have stuff in their drivers' hands a little bit more, which matters for them because their equipment isn't as great. But with driver ability coming into play, though, with this week, they could have a pretty solid finish in that regard right there.
I don't know what Jimmy has as far as insight to the team and help, but this is an area where even if he was only in the car in the super speedways, I could see some insight coming into play. He was very good on road courses, and his background, of course, was trophy truck racing. Well, I don't know if it was called trophy truck, but it was like the Ivan Stewart trucks. So, I mean, it wasn't an oval, right? He was doing lefts and rights all over the place. And look, to your point, Ty Gibbs has been very good on road courses. I mean, he really has, coming up through all the ranks. I mean, this is nothing new. So it's going to be tougher. I'll be frank, guys. I will probably scale back my lineups. I will probably target just 1 or 2 lineups this week and basically say I'm throwing my lottery ticket out there. I'm not going to do a bunch of lottery tickets because it's so easy to get burned on the road courses because just like the super speedways, we get these pileups and weird things happening. But on top of that, it's a whole different skill set. And the guys that are good are good. So
yeah,
a lot of people are going to be on the same ones.
I was going to say the discrepancy between the haves that do have the road course skills and the have-nots is bigger compared to, say, the super speedway events that we just had with Daytona and Atlanta, where it's a little more equalized. I think we're going to see the drivers that you expect to be good at these types of tracks are going to be way better than the guys that aren't good at these types of tracks. Which also, I'm going to just tell you right now, if there's one team that I have my eye on this week, it's Trackhouse, especially with their 3 drivers. You have Daniel Suarez, who's led laps before at this particular track. We have Ross Chastain, who is a former winner at COTA. And now they're a 3-car team with SVG now joining them too. So now those 3 can all transfer information and skills to each other.
And the last part right there, I don't want to overstate, but I don't want to understate. Having SVG notes will matter to Suarez and Chastain. Like, that is more helpful than I think people realize.
And one other point to Chastain that I want to bring up, and this could transition into our very next point of our preview coverage here. Chastain's running double duty this week.
Oh, I love that.
Nice.
Gosh, I love double duty work, man. Gets me just all excited.
So, speaking of double duty, how about we get into the list of the part-timers and notables for this race here? I don't know if you've looked at the Xfinity list there yet, Rich, but there's a bunch of interesting names right there. Do you want to read it off for us?
I have not looked at it yet, but I will be more than happy to read it off because I am absolutely intrigued. So, Sean, did Alex run well here last year? Alex Lobb?
Alex Labay, he's known for having his background in road racing.
That's what I thought.
He hasn't always had the finishes to prove it, but he does have the background and skill set to run well.
And then we got Ross Chastain in the 9. Carson Hocevar is doing double duty. For who?
Chastain's running the Junior Motorsports number 9.
I did not know that was a junior car. Well,
yeah.
Hot diggity dog. Carson Hocevar's in the 14, also doing double duty. And I will let people know this. Hocevar was kind of a class above everybody else in the truck series when they went to road races. I'll just mention that. William Byron in the 1 Hendrick entry. This week, Hendrick's going to, the number 17. They're going to have a few entries this year. William Byron has a very good record at this track. Tell you what, I wish I looked at this before I did some of my picks because Chastain, Hocevar, and Byron, they very well could be a part of a core 4. Riley Herbst in the 19, Corey Heim in the 24. That is a Sam Hunt machine. They don't always have the best speed, but we have, Sean, seen them do well at the road courses in that car. Very curious to watch that. Austin Green in the 32. Oh, Sean, you got to help me with this name, bro.
Baltazar Leguizamon,
Thank you. I think you're correct in the 35. Brad Perez in the 45. Don't sleep on him. Sage Karam in the 53. That's a former IndyCar background guy. Thomas, man, you would think I'd be able to pronounce this right because it looks Italian. Annunziata.
You got it.
Carson Ware, is that like Cody's son? And the 74.
That's a misprint. The 74 is not actually racing this week. I think.
All right. Fair enough. Josh Bilicki in the 91. Look, all those names are intriguing. I'm curious to see how well Heim does in the 24. He's been in Xfinity in this ride before. Riley Herbst, look, that's going to be a decent ride. That 19, that's a Joe Gibbs machine. So look out for him. William Byron in the 17. They won this race last year with Kyle Larson, if not last year, the year before. Carson Hocevar, who's he driving for in the 14?
That's the SS Greenlight Racing entry right there. Which he's filling in for Garrett Smithley this week, who decided to drop out and let Carson take the ride after he thought that he wasn't a good enough road course racer in order to make sure the car would qualify into the field.
Oh, well, Hocevar's been on the pole in trucks, so he'll get it qualified. I would argue then, if that's the case, Sean, if they ended up with a top 15 or 20th place finish, it's a good day for them.
Although that SS Greenlight Racing entry, that could be one to watch too, just because I remember way back in the day, I think it was the first year we went to COTA. That was before Stuart Haas Racing had entries, and I think Cole Custer may have ran in that car and had a good result in it too.
Okay.
Do you guys know at COTA, do they do any I don't think they have a ARCA race or anything, but any kind of Friday night non-NASCAR race where any of these part-time guys could be participating on this track?
I don't believe so, but let me look it up while Sean gets. And you know what, Sean? It was Connor Zilich that I thought odds were way off. But why don't you get into the Cup entries here? I'll look up this stuff for COTA.
Well, the Cup entry list is very short because we only have exactly one name, and it's a driver making their Cup Series debut this week. The young road course phenom himself, Connor Zilich, is in a 4th Trackhouse Racing entry, the number 87 for Cup.
I love
That's it. Just Connor Zilich.
Which I love Connor Zilich. There's a reason that, we talked him up in the Xfinity Series last week or the week before, or both. but I can't see him being top 3 in odds to win this race, Sean.
Yeah, for Cup, I'm not so sure. It's nice to see him bring Red Bull back into the sport. I will say that, though.
Well, I thought SVG was running some Red Bull this year. No?
Both of them are.
Okay.
So
87 and 88, sure. I got it. And Mark, no, there is no other racing at COTA. We got qualifying on Friday, Xfinity Saturday, Cup Sunday, and then the next event at COTA is MotoGP.
So not something we can take advantage of this week, but that was something I started to do at the end of last year. And I remember, I don't know if it was Zilich or someone else. It was a road course, and I don't know if it was
I think it was
Arca or
Sawawich, wasn't it?
maybe. I forget which. I don't know if this was Roval. I'm not sure off the top of my head from last year, but whatever guy did really well on the Friday night race, and he was a stud at relatively lower ownership for the road course and Xfinity, I believe. So just another maybe contrarian thing to look at that maybe a lot of other people don't think about.
I think you're spot on. I mean, you've heard me talk about it. I go look at these ARCA guys. Like that's partly why I enjoy the trucks is I enjoy finding these other racers in the Cars Tour, the ARCA series, finding fast drivers in these other areas, just like we do with football at high school and college, right? So, and look, you've heard me say it 100 times, Mark, seat time is seat time. So I don't care if they've never had a cup ride, say at COTA. If they've had a bunch of other rides, to your point, at COTA, that matters to me. I'm automatically going to give them a bump because could be different cars, could be all that. They know how to get around this place enough, No, fortunately, we don't have. What we could do, we could pull some ARCA road races. I could pull some ARCA road races, Mark, because a lot of these guys did come up through ARCA that way, and see if there's any finishes that jump out and maybe get that highlighted. So I'll see if I can find some of that for the article.
All
this
right.
week.
So before we get into our picks, just going to remind everybody that's watching or listening that we are a part of fantasyguru.com there. So you can go over to fantasyguru.com to see all of our content, but you can see that by getting the MVP Platinum or all-in packages. Just as a reminder, the MVP package is still going through the flash sale for $79.99. You get to all the different sports that are covered on fantasyguru.com. Other than the baseball and the football, but for those that are interested into baseball, the MLB draft guide is still available over at Fantasy Guru there, where you can read all of the latest guides, all the tips, tricks, tools of the trade from the Oracle himself, Ray Flowers. So go over there. Forget. Yeah. Can't forget that now.
And Patio Joe, I think, helps out on some of the stuff there. That's great. Ray's got it, but Ray heads up the baseball side of it. And I'll be honest, guys, I think Ray has taught me more about baseball than he probably, and he has probably forgot more than he's taught me about baseball. Do you know what I'm saying? Like his baseball knowledge is just kind of in a whole nother ballpark, in my opinion. So, good to see that. Always love Ray's guy. I don't even do much baseball, but I go read some of Ray's stuff because I'm like, oh, damn, this is pretty handy info. So
go read one of those articles and then go to an MLB game. You'll enjoy it 10 times more. So
I don't doubt that. That's a really good idea, Mark. I think I'm going to give that a shot. That sounds like a good time. So
I think I might be right there with you on that one.
That would be fun. That'd be fun. Tell you what, to go to a baseball game with Ray, I think would be a fun time.
Oh,
I can't lie. That would be a good time.
We've got to do a Fantasy Guru outing.
Right?
Yeah.
Hey, Ray, we're hijacking you. We're taking you to a baseball game, whether you like it or not. You're forced to go with the racing guys. Deal with it.
Yeah. Let's do it.
We'll go on an all-night bender and then take them to a NASCAR race the next day. So,
well, I was going to say, side note, Ray's a fast car guy. I don't know if you guys know this, but Ray is a fast car, big base kind of guy. So I'm not sure he wouldn't be down for like a baseball game followed up by a NASCAR race the next day. I don't know. Maybe we should take him to a truck race so it's a little shorter or something and plenty of accidents or whatnot. But yeah, maybe we need to talk about that. But I have learned Ray is a car guy, and I did not know that. But there's a few things Ray and I share in common that way. So We'll have to figure that out. Well, and he doesn't take vacation, so we're going to have to kidnap him for it to happen.
Yeah. While we're plotting all of that to happen, for anybody else that's still watching or listening, be sure to go over to fantasyguru.com, email support, and they'll get you the best possible deal in order to basically get you the best package you can get you the best deal and everything. And you know what? Tell them that we all sent you there, so that way we can have leverage over Ray in order to get him to go to a NASCAR race with us.
And please don't call your police that we are plotting any kidnapping. I have already been down this road once before, and it gets messy. So,
yeah, it is a mess when you put it like that. But you know what isn't a mess, and what surely won't be a mess, hopefully speaking, is our picks for this week. So let's get right into it, guys.
Say the race is going to be a mess. What are you talking about?
That's why I said I'm hoping that it isn't too much of a mess. You see, you try to err on the side of caution, but it's NASCAR. What am I saying? Top price picks to watch. Let's get into it here. So I basically have Tyler Reddick, I have Shane Van Gisbergen, and I have Ross Chastain as my three there. Reddick, former winner at this track. He's one of the best NASCAR-based road course racers in the entire field. He's finished top 3 in each of the last 3 events at COTA. Love him right there. SPG, we all know he's going to be good. He just has a natural road racing background. And then Ross Chastain, as mentioned before, he's doing double duty in a good car for both races. So he's going to be one to watch. He's going to have that seat time appropriately. And this is one of Ross's best tracks. He got his first career cup win here. Let's not forget, too. So he's going to be good. And I love the price point for Chastain on both sites this week.
I struggled on this one, guys. I really did. I could have used any combination of about 6 different guys. So I'm just going to go with the first 3 that came to mind and hope I'm not wrong. Chase Elliott, SVG, and Dinger. Maybe I feel differently about Dinger after qualifying. Maybe he's overpriced for how he's finished the last year or two. But when we go road racing, it's hard for me to not look at AJ Allmendinger. It really is. I mean, the fact that SVG is out there, there's a couple of true road racers. I don't know, man. I feel like Dinger's gonna, and he showed us a little something again at Daytona. So give me some Dinger, SVG, and I feel like Chase Elliott gets off the schneid here very soon.
Yeah, I'm with you on Chase Elliott getting off the schneid, and I got SVG. I mean, obviously road course warrior. You know, he doesn't have a whole lot of cup stats, so you know maybe we get some people overlooking him, but he is the odds-on favorite, so I would doubt that. Connor Zilic. I mean, look, to your point, Rich, earlier. I mean, you know, there's a bigger discrepancy, there's a bigger gap in guys that are talented on road courses. So I think, you know, given the fact that he's also the runner-up when you go to Vegas, he's these you know, other than SVG, he's the only other guy. Well, no, it's him and Byron, I think, but you know, they're all plus 500, plus 600 to win this race. Connor Zilic won a road race in his Xfinity Series debut last year in mid-September. So he's a young, lesser known name coming onto the scene. He's $8,700, and I think it plays into my strategy where I'm having a hard time paying all the way up at the top. I'd rather try to spread myself out around the mid-range, given the fact that we don't have to worry too much or focus as much on dominators and fastest laps here.
I have 2 predictions for you, Mark. One, I think SVG is going to be somewhere around 60 to 70% ownership. I don't know where your numbers will come in at. I'm just saying that's my gut feeling, and I'm curious to see where they come in and where you actually calculate it out to.
I think it's going to be 75, maybe 80.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Realistically, I think that's accurate too.
That's fair. I would say 70% is what I kind of had him at. I think Vegas and the books are overstating Zilic, and here's where I'm coming from. It's a huge difference. One, it's a huge difference going from the Xfinity cars to the Cup cars. The Cup cars you hear it from every driver. It's a big jump. The Xfinity cars are much more in line with ARCA cars, which are old Cup cars and so on. I think because of SVG's initial success on the road course, Zilic's initial success at the Xfinity road course, I think he's going to be overplayed. this group of drivers is a far better group that he's competing against. He had maybe 2 or 3 guys that were road racers in Xfinity to deal with. He's got a bigger number because even some of these Cup guys that aren't known for road racing, the Chase Elliott's, the Kyle Bushes, Kyle Larson, who has done very well here at COTA, Reddick, Zilich is in a whole different league. So I like the call. I'm much more hesitant probably than most.
I guess also where oh, go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say there is one other important point about Zilich that we do have to bring up. Now, whether this makes you want to use Zilich more or not, that depends on how you want to interpret what I'm about to say. But we have to remember that Zilich has ran at COTA before in a truck, actually, last year. He finished 4th in the Truck Series race last year, despite multiple setbacks. He kept coming back towards the front. He didn't win, but he certainly did a lot of passes. So, and we've talked about how drivers have said that the trucks are a little bit closer to the Cup Series car compared to Xfinity now.
True.
So
I think this is probably the biggest decision in this price range when you're looking at the 80. You got Chastain at 8,600, Zilich at 8,700, Dinger at 8,900, Elliott at 9,000. So ownership, I think, will actually be spread out amongst those guys. I think we might see Zilich's ownership come in a little lower. And the other part about this is where does he start the race? Dinger might start second behind SVG on the pole, where maybe Zilich starts 15th. And now we've got a much better place differential opportunity at the same price point, making him a better play than a guy like Allmendinger, who might just be stuck behind SVG the whole time, or vice versa. Maybe it's Allmendinger and Zilich. So,
well, I tell you what, if you're right that Zilich's ownership is down, that changes my stance. I'm not as much changed by, say, the truck success, because again, I'll argue he probably was at the top of the ladder as far as road racing talent compared to the guys of the Truck Series. I don't think I can put him here at Cup. Not ahead of SVG, not ahead of Dinger, probably not ahead of some of the other even full-time Cup guys, right? But we just talked about it, and I guess we talked about it more off air, but we said this was a great topic. Ownership seems to be a much bigger indicator on how we should play DFS, right? If we're going to chase the wins, the top, we have got to find a way to differentiate lineups. When you have 70% ownership or more on one driver, anybody can have them. It's a free square because if something happens, everybody's in the tank for it. And chances are the people who didn't use them were probably being contrarian in other areas. They need those low ownership picks to hit. They have to. Whereas if you could get away with an SVG, but if you can throw in someone at, say, Zilich, who is, say, 4% versus Chase Elliott, who's likely 15%, I don't care that I think Chase is win more likely than Zilich. Again, Mark's point about where they're at in qualifying, that low ownership is kind of a moving factor, I think. I feel like it's a motivating factor, I should say.
Also, I'm just going to bring up this really important point regarding Zilich as well, too. It's the price discrepancy between both sites. Whereas he's 8,700 on DraftKings, and then he is, as I scroll down here, he's the 8th most expensive driver. On FanDuel, he's the 6th most expensive driver, and some of those other names that we mentioned that are more expensive than him on DK are cheaper than him on FanDuel. Dinger's cheaper, Elliott is cheaper than both Zilich on FanDuel, whereas on DraftKings, those two are more expensive than Zilich.
I think that's the way you got to approach this week. I actually, that's almost how I hit last week. I just made the dumb move of Suarez over Bell, but it's, play one lineup on FanDuel, play one lineup on DraftKings, get your value plays on one site, and then have your pivots on the other to be able to get exposure to both in different formats. If we're talking about ownership, I would say the early projections for ownership says amongst all those guys we just talked about, Chastain is going to be your lowest owned driver.
Oh my gosh, sign me up.
Yeah.
Sign me up then.
Yes,
sign me up. I mean, between
please.
the history and everything else, sign me up, right? And I got to tell you, the more that I see the books and everything on Zilich, which tells me money is still coming in on Zilich. I know that doesn't really play into fantasy, but it will on the odds. I got to be honest, guys. The more everything goes that direction, the more I want to go the opposite way.
Yeah.
I really hate when everything is going one way. It just it doesn't seem to work out often, in my opinion. So, I mean, Sean, people weren't all, did SVG ruin people? Because SVG did not get this type of love when he went to his first race at Chicago and won. You and I talked about him. You and I said, look, this is what he can do and can do it well. These cars actually are very similar to the supercars, all these things. And now it's like everybody overreacted because I like Connor Zilic, but he's still young. He's still learning. This is awful lot of pressure to put on a guy that doesn't have a full-time Cup ride.
And
yeah, he's just an Xfinity regular this season.
Yeah, he never even was that before. We didn't even have him in a full-time truck ride before.
Nope, only just part-time.
Think about it this way, too. Only one of us going into this podcast list referenced Chastain as far as top price drivers. It just kind of reinforces that element, too. And I think it definitely makes me reconsider it now that we're talking through it. Chastain might be the priority play here.
Yeah, especially at the price point we talked about.
I love Chastain this week. I mean, come on now. I think it's a no-brainer pick for me.
Interesting. It is very interesting to see how some of these pros that do the lines and the money making, and it just sometimes I'm just very shocked. You know, we thought SVG was underpriced and underappreciated, and now I'm sitting here going, and I love Connor Zilic. We talked about him last year. I have a lot of respect. I think he's a young talent. I think this is one of the young and up and comers in the sport. I feel the same way about Connor Mozak, right? There's a few of these guys, Nick Sanchez. But when everybody starts going that direction, man, I get cold feet. I don't like it, man. Well, let's get into our mid-tier picks because we're sure to be talking ownership there. Hit us with what you got, Sean.
So basically, I have 3 drivers and then one that I had to mention because he's just in a different range. But I have Alex Bowman, Chris Buescher, and Austin Cindric as all the 8K guys that I like there. But then because really I have to mention somebody that's below 8K so I don't get overweight too much within one range, I'm throwing Ryan Blaney in there. And do I have to explain this one? Do you think I should?
I don't know that you need to explain it. Does he have the best road racing record? No. But he has shown speed at times. And quite frankly, going back to last year, that 12 car, dare I say it, is he the class of the field at Penske? Is he the leader at Penske? I think he is.
I think so. I personally think so too. And I am going to just mention this about Ryan Blaney. I think people are not going to pay attention to him this weekend when I think really there should be some attention on him, especially for DFS purposes. You look back towards the last couple of finishes that Ryan Blaney has had at COTA. He has never finished worse than 21st, and he has 3 top 20 finishes in his Cup career. And the last 2 races, he started very deep into the field. 2023, he started 38th, made it to 21st. Last year, he started in the 28th position, bought it all the way to 12th place. Big gains in place differential right there.
No, I really like that call. I really do. And, I'd point this out too. Joey Logano wasn't really known as a road racer when he started performing well at road courses and got a win, So it would be unfathomable. And I love that you have Austin Cindric in there. I don't know if we talked about it while the podcast was going, but I told you I keep having this thing about Austin Cindric, keep coming back to him, and I wasn't bold enough to pick him. So the fact you used him here, now I've got 2 names written down here, Sean, that I didn't have that you've now been pushing just because of all the stuff we talked about that now I'm kind of in on it. And I agree with you. I think Blaney's going to be completely overlooked. Mark, what do you have a rough idea what you think his ownership will be?
Again, I think place differential is obviously going to come into play when it comes to exact numbers. But I think it'll be very low. I mean, you might be looking at single digits considering, given his price point as far as, versus where he's sitting in the field. I mean, we're talking about, he's 7,800.
7,800 on DK.
Yeah, like Cindric is right there with him. Briscoe. I think you're probably going to get him like I would suspect like 15% just because of name. There's some name affiliation and familiarity there, but and like you said, I mean, he is probably the class of Penske, so I don't know if it's the direction I want to go, though. I don't know if there's enough supporting data to put him in my lineup, especially if I'm only playing one lineup on each site this week.
I still personally think that Cindric is going to be the best performing Penske driver at this track because he's just the best road racer of the three so far. And Priceline, he's very close to Logano and Blaney anyway, if you look on DK. But really, though, I think the price discrepancy is very interesting when you look at FanDuel as well, because Ryan Blaney, he's only 6,800 on FanDuel, but I think really what's more shocking to me is where they have Cindric at 7,500 on FanDuel. I mean, wow, that is really, really inexpensive for him.
That seems like a discrepancy where both of them, in my opinion, are FanDuel only plays. I think they're priced up a little too high for DraftKings.
Interesting.
I think I'm still willing to pay out for Cindric at least, because just the history there is very good overall at COTA. This is like a good track for him. And even the one race when he went here for his first time on a part-time ride, when it wasn't as good of equipment, even though it was a Team Penske car, he still showed a lot of speed in that particular race too. There's never been a race at COTA where I'd argue Cindric never showed speed. He's always good at this track.
I dig it. Getting into my picks here, I've also got Chris Buescher. Maybe I'm just being too lazy here with Michael McDowell. I mean, he's got a road racing background. He hasn't done well lately, though, so it's worth noting. I think Kyle Busch is just underpriced in this group. I really do. He was right there at the end last year. We thought he was contending for a win, and he got kind of ran over. And I do have Alex Bowman as a fourth. I will throw this out. Honorable mention to Ty Gibbs. I just think he's priced a little high. I think Briscoe is underpriced because I like the fact that he's in a car that used to be run by Martin Truex. And I know Martin Truex isn't the same driver, but Martin Truex was never really known as a road racer, and he did quite well in that number 19 Toyota. So I feel like Briscoe is an under-the-radar contrarian play that we shouldn't lose sight of.
Interesting. I know qualifying is going to play a big part in as far as the final outlooks of these drivers, so be sure to hit us up on the Discord for latest thoughts after qualifying for sure. Now let's get into our sleepers and values plays.
Did Mark get his yet?
No, I was going to say I have Bowman, Buescher, and Gibbs. We didn't really talk about Gibbs too much, but he's got some success here. He's definitely, we're talking best finish third, worst ninth. So he's finished in the top 10 every race here. He's only had two, but, I would say of those three, believe it or not, I think Buescher will be significantly lower owned than Bowman and Gibbs.
I agree with that call actually too.
I think Buescher's kind of due. It's kind of like Elliott. It's like, maybe you craft like a who's due type of lineup and you throw in like a Buescher and Elliott and then you stack it with like some Trackhouse guys or something like that. So I don't know. I think Buescher is certainly in line. We're talking about a guy that might be 18% ownership.
Oh, I'd love to
sign
have
up for that on Buescher.
I'd love to have that if that's the case.
Because I think Bowman and Gibbs will probably both land in at about 30.
Oh, if that's the case, Mark, I would much rather have Buescher at that price point. Hands down. I'll take my odds. I'll take my swing and miss if I miss.
Oh, yeah. And just to add a few extra fact nuggets towards wanting to use Buescher, all four of his starts, he scored positive place differential, and he finished eighth in his last two races at COTA as well.
He has been so underappreciated at road courses. He was an anchor in my lineups in the road courses the last couple of years. So you guys are just singing more music to my ears, man.
Use some Chris Buescher.
Buescher Chastain is looking like my core four here.
I was going to say, man, I've got those two names circled, dude.
Yeah. That's probably who I'm betting on. That's for damn sure.
All right, sleepers and bargains. Hey, let's do this one a little quick because I'm going to be, since we overlapped a ton here, all three of us had Todd Gilliland. Is there much to say about Gilliland other than he keeps doing well at these tracks?
This track is made for Gilliland right here. He's been very good overall in the Cup Series. He's never had a race where he's had negative place differential in his Cup career. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think he's a Truck Series winner at COTA before as well, too.
I'll have to look that up. I'm not sure. You guys both had Zane Smith, and spoiler alert, I had Zane Smith and changed it. So for what it's worth, I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't have changed it. So Zane Smith out there at $6,400. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. Zane Smith did win a road course in the Truck Series, correct?
He won twice at COTA in the
Twice.
Truck Series.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So shame on me for taking him out. You got thoughts on Zane Smith, Mark?
I just think, when I'm looking at these value plays with Zane Smith, Gilliland, Custer's my third value play. Really, I'm just looking for guys that maybe they finish or they start in the 15th to 20th position and basically finish in the same spot, because that's a cheap and easy way to get a lower price guy to pay off like that. Road courses, you don't have to get those Hail Mary 5,200 guys that post 70 points like Carson Hocevar did last week.
Right.
It's more about getting a guy that's just going to, not completely kill you.
So you gave us your third in Cole Custer. Sean's got, depending on qualifying or a coin toss, I have a feeling he's more worried about qualifying than flipping coins. John Hunter Nemechek and Eric Jones. Thoughts there, Sean?
So I might be kicking balls with the soccer club potentially this week there, but Eric Jones, he's had his fair share of decent results for the price, and he is absolutely dirt cheap on DraftKings at $5,300. In fact, actually, he's the third cheapest driver in the entire slate over at DK. He's $3,200 over on at FanDuel. Looking back towards Eric Jones, his last couple of races so far at COTA, he has about 3 different finishes with positive place differential, and that includes 2 top 20 finishes. And as for John Hunter, he's had his fair share of decent results in the lower series at this track too. And he also did finish 21st, which was slightly ahead of his starting position last year. I think it's a coin toss because how much I like these drivers both depends on how well they qualify. Like if they're towards the back, I definitely have them in consideration to use. But if they qualified towards mid-pack, I'm a little bit more iffy about it. But there's really not a lot of bright spots when you get below 6K on DraftKings. So Jones caught my attention there just on the place differential history.
That makes complete sense. So my list was a little different. I am kind of feeling Carson Hocevar. Here's my nervousness with Hocevar. He's got a bullseye on his back. I think he can run well here. I hope that recency bias from his drafting, races doesn't, get everybody going that route. I go back to when he qualified on the pole with a broken foot at, I believe, Mid-Ohio. Pretty sure it was Mid-Ohio. He can get around these places. What's that, Sean?
That was Mark actually saying.
I was just commenting, wow, that's sick.
What? That I pulled that memory out or whatever? It's kind of weird.
That and the memory of itself too.
That's what I mean.
The fact that he had a broken foot and he did that.
Right.
Wait, wasn't it Sonoma he did that actually?
Maybe it was Sonoma. For some reason, I thought it was Mid-Ohio because it was raining. But
yeah, I think it was Sonoma.
I'd have to go below. The point is, he's run well on road courses. May have been a truck, right? So he's on my radar. Here's where I'm really torn because it's going to depend on money. Seeing Denny Hamlin at 7,100, which I know is technically the next tier, and Joey Logano at 72 or 73, those dollar values just seem so low. Now, to your guys' point, if they qualify in the back, I'm guessing they're going to be major chalk, right? If they qualify, say, 22nd or something. But the pricing just seems so cheap. Like Brad Keselowski's under $7,000. I remember when Brad Keselowski and Kyle Busch were battling it out at Watkins Glen. That was one of the greatest races I've ever seen with Marcus Ambrose. So to see Brad and Joey and And Denny Hamlin, all listed at that 7,000 price point, just seems so low. Like, I'm struggling with that.
I'm just gonna say this: one of those guys that I'd have my eye on more than anybody would be Hamlin, and that's just
Fair.
because he usually qualifies towards the back at this track.
Yep.
It's not a great track for him, but he certainly made the most of those starts DFS wise as well. He has 2 finishes with positive place differential in his Cup career, but he's finished in the top 20 every single one of those races. So if he qualifies,
7,100.
yeah. I'm just saying that's points right there. Whereas I'm not really Logano, he can be a coin toss too, I'd say, but because his results have been mixed at this track. But the one that I'm not using really or putting as much into is Brad. He's never been great at this track. Never has.
But his teammate has, and I feel like eventually it's going to share somewhere. And maybe this is too much of a gut thing. I'm with you. The first one that caught my eye, Sean, was Hamlin. I've got, you see it here in the notes. Hamlin's the first name I listed, and I can't get past. It was as I scrolled through the list, I saw Brad's pricing, and it seemed too low. But given Zane Smith's history here, Todd Gilliland's history, why not save the $300-400 and use those guys, right? Hocevar's down under that same price range. So, but I tell you what, I'm not as much on Logano, even though I think the pricing's low, but I'm really struggling not using Hamlin. Like that price just seems so off to me.
I am going to say this. If you wanted to take the whole teammate sharing information angle and wanted to put it in the mind of RFK with Buescher, I would be more willing to take perhaps a shot on Ryan Preece at 5,700 in that same
sense.
sort of equipment.
That makes sense. Way cheaper. And I can almost guarantee, Mark, I bet you your model has ownership on Ryan Preece in the single digits, low single digits.
Less than 5%.
Yep.
For sure. Less than 5%. Yep.
So now you're talking about a cheap contrarian play. Like Mark has educated us in the past. You don't need him to score 70 points. A 40-point outing at that price point is big. That's a win.
Oh, yeah.
So.
And just to further also add some points towards Ryan Preece right there. 3 starts at COTA, 2 finishes with positive place differential, best finish of 15th in 2021. But in last year's race, he started 24th and finished 23rd. He made it up to 5th at the end of the second stage during last year's race, too.
Okay. What were you going to say, Mark?
I've got to point out about Hamlin, Briscoe, Cindric, Blaney. All identical odds when it comes to winning the race, top 10, top 5. Hamlin's the cheapest. So, best value, probably highest ownership of that group. Hamlin's approaching the Buescher territory as far as what is expected of him, and $1,000 less than Buescher. So, I could even see Hamlin higher in ownership over Buescher. So, my personal opinion is Hamlin in small contests, not in large contests.
Okay. Now, that's because you think you'll be more chalky for the small contests?
Yes, because I think the price point and the name and just the potential and the upside is certainly there. But because it's a lower price point, a lot more people are going to be willing to pay down for it, as you are saying.
Exactly.
And I don't think it's a bad play either.
No, but to your point, on the big tournaments, though, we need to be more contrarian.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
isn't that kind of the general approach, right? Because you've got to be more differentiation from the other people in the lineup trains and all that sort of crap.
And maybe Hamlin starts 19th and finishes, I don't know, 13th, 12th. Sure. But in a large tournament, like you might need more than that out of a $7,100 driver.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. So hit us with the core DFS picks there, Sean.
All right. So let's go through my core 4 here. I got Ross Chastain at 8,600 on DraftKings, 9,500 on FanDuel. I got Austin Cindric at a flat 8K on DraftKings and 7,500 on FanDuel. Todd Gilliland is the value play I got at 6,600 on DraftKings and 5,800 on FanDuel. And then as for my top price driver, For DraftKings, I have SVG at 9,800, and then for FanDuel, I have Tyler Reddick at 13K.
So I'm probably going to be changing mine around because I'm a little too top heavy and I'm a little uneasy with it. But for right now, I've got SVG. I think he's just so chalky. It's going to be tough to not use. I am a little torn on Dinger. I have a hard time not using him, but qualifying will matter here. I still say my gut shots with Chase Elliott, so I'm kind of feeling him. Chances are I'm probably only going to get 2 of those 3 in a lineup, depending on not cheapies, unless I do take a swing with like a Ryan Preece. And I will be shocked if I don't have a lineup with Todd Gilliland or most of my lineups with Todd Gilliland in them.
I got SVG at 9,800, Zilich 8,700, Busher 8,100, Bowman 83. As you guys said, I mean, once qualifying happens, we know where they land. I'll probably be changing or making some pivots here. And I have a really hard time not playing Ross Chastain, so that probably is going to go in place of Zilich. There's going to be some tinkering here. So, but generally speaking, those are all good plays, and I think everyone that we mentioned for our cores are all in play.
Truly.
So go with your bets here, because I tell you what, I'm going to steal your long shot because, like I said, I kept coming back to that guy, Sean. I didn't know what to do, and now you've got me all in on him.
Oh, yeah. So I'll go ahead and talk about my betting core 4 here to win. I got SBG at plus 500. I know that ain't Maletto odds, but I think it realistically can hit right there, too. Tyler Reddick at plus 700. William Byron at plus 750. Ross Chastain at plus 1,400. And then my longer shot is Austin Cindric at plus 3,000. This line should really not be this deep. I mean, seriously. He should be like plus 2,000 or something.
I'd say 2,000 is where, yeah, I agree. 2,000 is where he should be.
3,000 is off.
Yeah.
Big time.
Look, I hate the SVG line, but I have a hard time not telling someone to bet it, Sean. So it's not a line I want to go after. This is the threshold where it's hard for me to recommend a bet. I get doing the bet, but it's so fluky in racing. I hate 5-1. I hate saying 5-1 is not good odds, but it's in racing, in my opinion, it's not. I think Chase Elliott's overpriced or underpriced, however you want to think about 1,100. I think he should be closer to Kyle Larson and Byron around that 750, 900 range, somewhere in that ballpark. I do like Kyle Larson at plus 900. I think it's a little longer given his recent history and past history here, and a little bit of a longer shot. And look, if Kyle Busch's odds continue to be in that 2,200 to 3,000 range, I'm going to continue to recommend him because at some point, look, he is not going to go 2 years without a win. I will bet my nutsack on it. He will not go 2 years without a win. A win is coming. 2,200 just seems awfully long.
I think we got to talk about Tyler Reddick more, but my betting winners, SVG plus 500, Zilich plus 600. SVG willing to bet now because if he starts on the pole, then that's probably going to get better, or worse, I should say. As
250 probably goes. Something like that.
But Zilich goes the other way, where Zilich might start further back, and all of a sudden he's plus 1,100 versus plus 600. So, that's probably going to be my approach with those two from a betting perspective. And then Chase Elliott plus 1,100, Bell plus 1,100. I just feel like both of those guys at those returns are fair price points, and both have a great shot at winning this as well.
Agreed.
Especially with
and Bell I do think you're. And I do think you're right that we need to talk about Tyler Reddick. We have not talked about him much, but Tyler Reddick, till midpoint last year, had been known as the road racer in this car. He had won, 4 out of 6 at one point, Sean, or 4 out of 7, 4 out of 5?
He has 3 road course wins since 2022.
Yeah, okay. So I think it was 3 out of 5 at one point he was. But
yeah. He has the 4th best overall average finish of all drivers at road courses in that time, only being beaten out by Chase Elliott, SVG, and Chris Buescher at the top right there.
Interesting little stat haul there. We should have been talking up. We talked about all the other guys that, ad nauseum, but we didn't do Reddick that way. Interesting.
Yeah, and Reddick won at this track, and he's been top 5 in each of the last 3 COTA races. Ever since it's been the next-gen car, he's never finished worse than 5th at COTA.
Gotcha. Well, let's hit our bets real quick here, Sean. Or did we do that already? We did that already. Future bets. So I wanted to throw this out there. I took a look at futures because one of our new members, or I shouldn't say new, he's new to Discord. He had reached out looking for some futures. I'd love for you guys to take a look at the futures and give me your feedback. I'm struggling. 5-1 for Kyle Larson to win the whole deal when we know it comes down to one race at Phoenix where Penske dominates. Like, I'd almost just rather bet 3 Penske drivers. You know what I mean? Lane Riggs in the trucks. You guys know I love Lane Riggs. 7-1, 7.5-1 to win the championship. I don't know. What do you guys think about tying up money for 8 months roughly for odds that are 5-7-1 and I would say aren't even that high likelihood of hitting?
Yeah, I usually don't lock in future bets around this time of year that much because the racing seasons, and we've seen this many times before, Rich, it can start out one way for a driver
Yep.
but end in a totally different direction that we do not see coming. I think if you had to even take a shot at a driver there, I personally would say maybe someone like a Christopher Bell, who definitely it was one of my picks to maybe win the title going into the season, or somebody like a Ryan Blaney, who's been very good at Phoenix in the past, and he's won the championship there before. He's a plus 750. But if you wanted to go maybe a little bit deeper, you'd have to. It's basically like trying to predict who's going to end up having a breakout season for the rest of the year. And it's not easy to really predict that because in the way I see it, I think that breakouts are something that get predicted as something that gradually happens and then it hits. We've seen this time and time again in NASCAR history, Rich.
No, I totally agree. And I would much rather say take a bet on Austin Cindric to finish the year the top 10 in standings. It's not a line that's out there. But you want to talk about someone that could break out? Austin Cindric is on my short list of someone to watch to break out, right? He drives a Penske and could run well at Phoenix. You know what I mean? So I could see a path for him. I'm with you. Like, there's no way I could bet Larson when I know Blaney's so good at Phoenix. I'd rather get the longer odds, but I'm with you. I can't recommend anybody chasing any future bets as far as a NASCAR championship right now. I can't do it. Heim is only plus 250.
Yeah. And do what's fun too. Like, it's not fun just having your money sit there for like 8 months and just watch it slowly dwindle away. Like you said, I mean, you could, and oftentimes you can just get better odds as the season plays out. You know, maybe one of these guys that are plus 600 now, like you said, goes on a losing streak. All of a sudden they're plus 1500. They can easily turn it around, get into the playoffs and win the whole thing. So
we nearly saw it last year with Ryan Blaney nearly doing just that when he got about as deep as 28-1 to win the title when he had to win Martinsville and then win Phoenix, and he almost did just that. Or we think about last year, and this is a call that I even said on this show last year to consider doing it, yet I never hit on it myself when I personally bet it. But Logano winning the title.
Right.
Logano winning the title after he got in through that DQ.
yeah.
Right. That was so fluke.
Yeah.
That's why I said I can't chase. If I was going to do anything, I'd rather say place 4 bets at guys at plus 30, at 30-1 or something like that on guys that I think, you know, they got a new crew chief, they're on a new team, maybe a Colleague Racing takes a step, something like that. But to bet a guy at 5-1 that didn't even make the Final Four, even though we thought he was this shoe-in. Sean, you heard me talk about Corey Heim all year in the Truck Series. There's no way I'm betting him at 2.5-1 to win a championship. He was by far the best driver of the Truck Series the last 2 years, and he didn't win it.
Exactly. If I'm going to do something like that in the Cup Series, I'd want to maybe take some shots, perhaps maybe at Chastain at 22-1, or maybe someone like Chase Briscoe, who's been good at Phoenix in the past, at 25-1, and JGR, they've had good cars at Phoenix before as well. I think they're the only team that, realistically speaking, I think could stand up to Penske.
Oh, I'm with you guys. Mark, what you got? Because I saw you picked up a bet too. I'm curious. Lay it on.
Yeah, DraftKings does these group winners. So I've been starting to eye these a little bit closer. And on DraftKings, there's a group D. You've got Daniel Suarez, Chris Buescher, Denny Hamlin, and Chase Briscoe. Who's going to win amongst that group? I got Chris Buescher at plus 240. Suarez is also plus 240. Hamlin and Briscoe are both plus 300. I guess my approach is also almost taking a reverse look at this when I can utilize DFS pricing and compare it to odds. And Chris Buescher is the highest priced driver of this group. And in my opinion, statistically speaking, has the best shot to win amongst this group for plus 240 just to beat 3 other drivers in a race that I'm expecting him to maybe get
Top
back
5?
a little bit. You know, I'll take Chris Buescher all day at plus 240 amongst this
I
group.
think it's a good find. I think both
Oh,
those
yeah.
bets are good find. Yours too, Sean. I really liked.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say the bets that I placed there as others to consider is Chris Buescher and Austin Cindric to both get top 10 finishes. Chris Buescher, he's at plus 100 there, and then Austin Cindric's at plus 110. When you find
So
a
even
driver
money.
that's displayed some good history with getting top 10s at a track and they're at plus odds, I think you've got to really consider taking that.
Nope, I agree. Well, gentlemen, it's been fun. We should probably get this wrapped up. Shout out again, please. If you enjoy this content, you want more, please go to fantasyguru.com, click the subscribe button, check out all the different packages. Maybe you do want football and baseball. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just want the MVP with everything but NFL and Major League Baseball. We've got that. That's a great deal. I'm not going to lie to you. $80 for 12 months. I mean, $4 a month. No, not $4 a month. $7 a month. I cannot do math today. I am struggling. Less than $7 a month. Mark's over there laughing at me because I can't do any math. I'm struggling.
I can't do that in my head either.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll have you covered. Look, last year we won back your money in the first month. We did. I'm not trying to break our arms, patting ourselves on the back, but we did. That's our goal. That's our mission. That's all we want to do. I'll be frank. I care what I do. But honestly, it's seeing, the screenshots of everybody else hitting and winning. Like, that's why we do this. Okay. So please check out Fantasy Guru. Feel free to reach out to support at fantasyguru.com. Tell them we sent you. Tell them what you're looking for. They'll hook you up with the best deal. I promise. We will have the overview article dropping. Mark's got you covered on Xfinity again this week. Sean's got you covered on Cup again this week. We'll all be in the Discord spitballing, throwing out ideas. I'll be frank. I think we've got the best racing group around. I think it's better than what we did last year. I think it's the best one out in the industry. I'll stand by that statement. So please check us out. Give us a follow. You can find Sean on X at SeanE247. You can find Mark at DFS_Marlin. We won't worry about me. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's always been a pleasure. Until next time, we're out.